Hello, hello, welcome. We're so excited to have Carrie Reichardt here. She's a London-based artist who uses craft as a form of protest and care. So, Carrie, share with our audience a little bit about you and your work and movement.
Well, hi, like I said, like you introduced me, I'm Carrie. I'm an artist. I live in London. And I'm probably most well known for the fact that I've spent the last 20 years mosaicing the outside of my house. But I actually graduated in 1991 from Leeds Polytechnic with a degree in fine art sculpture. And,
Oh,
ever since then, I've been creating and making stuff and crafting.
Yeah. We'd love to discuss the question, how can creativity create positive social change with you? I think that you could probably speak to that pretty openly and knowledgeably.
Well, yes, I mean, from a very personal point of view,
Mhm.
it was life changing for me because I see it as a form of art therapy. I'm quite aware of the fact that I use art and especially craft as a way of addressing a lot of mental health problems that I've had over the years. That's why I called my house the treatment rooms. I stole that from the sign of a mental hospital. It was in a mental hospital and it said treatment rooms. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to take that and put that on my studio because I recognized then that that was me going into therapy. And so I think because of my own life journey and because art was so instrumental in me staying alive, literally
mhm.
staying alive, and being able to deal with a lot of my own personal problems and traumas. I recognized that it was a great thing to do with other people. And so essentially, from when left college, me and my best friend from college, Karen Francesca, and her older brother, who's an artist who goes by the name of ATM Street Art, we formed a group called Living Space Arts, and we became a community art collective. So, I mean, that was from '98. So, if you imagine, I've been working for ever since. So, it's what, nearly 30 years.
Okay.
And most of the ethos of all of my work from that point has been about trying to use art as a way of bringing around social cohesion and agency because
Mhm.
it healed me. So I went out in the world to try and heal the world with it.
I
I
love
love
it.
that. Yes.
So, art has healed you. So, you're a testimony to that.
Yeah, yeah, I think it changed me from a victim to a survivor.
Mm.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Art has just been able to communicate something that I cannot communicate in words. You have to get to my age, which is the crone stage. You have to be in the last stage of your life. That's why you become an elder and a wise woman. It's not because you're necessarily wise, it's just because you've got
Yes.
so much experience to draw upon, and you have to be able to look back at things. You
Yeah.
know, you
Mhm.
really have to look back at things because what happened to me was that when I was 21, I was chased down an alley, and I was hit to the ground and I was sexually assaulted. And it, that moment shattered me because from that
Mhm.
moment I stopped being a confident young woman who thought, yeah, no one's going to tell me where to walk down the street, to someone who couldn't be in my own flat. And so it was completely traumatizing. And I
Mhm.
tried to cut my wrists. And at that moment, I just 2 months later, I was starting an art foundation
Wow.
course, 1 year art foundation course where I'd gone because I'd previously dropped out of a filmmaking course and thought I want to go back to filmmaking. And I went to do an art foundation course. But I didn't know, but I spent an entire year doing art therapy. Everything I did was processing this, but I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I got
Right.
set a project that was design a poster for a local adventure playground. I didn't even know until when they do a crit. At the end of the year, they look at all your work, they pull it
Mhm.
all out.
Mhm.
They pulled out my design poster, which was anonymous scaffolding with men lurking in the background. Do you know what I mean? It was just,
Right.
I really just, I went there to do film And I ended up doing sculpture. I was the only sculpture student, so I used to be in a little Victorian house that was attached to the Polytechnic, and I just spent a term making a man attacking a woman from behind in paper mache. And then I spent 6 months, 6 weeks making a film called Ode to Love, which might as well be called Ode to Violence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was very unregulated, I think it was
Yeah.
brilliant in a way. There was no tutor looking at me. Nobody saw what
Yeah.
I was doing. Nobody.
Wow.
And I took that to my first choice, which was to go to Sheffield to study fine art filmmaking. I took this film and I went to the interview, and it was only 3 minutes, and I've still got it. And they played it, and I had a panel of 3 people, and one of them said, "I think that's the most misogynistic thing I've ever seen in my life." And one of them said, "Do you know what? If I had the power, I'd destroy that." And then the other one said, "We'd never allow you to make such a film in our university." I
God,
thought,
wow, there's so many
and,
layers to this.
and so
Wow.
I sat there and I just wanted to cry. I just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
mortified. And never
Yeah.
to this day, I think, were they playing devil's advocate? They could have just said that to see what I would say.
Yeah.
Now I would argue that film. I probably
Mhm.
wouldn't make it anymore because my view of even using that material's changed. But I would be
Right.
able to articulate and say, "Look, I've just been sexually assaulted.
Right.
This is processing something. I've made this film for 6 weeks, you know." But I didn't. I sat there and froze in the same way I froze when I was assaulted. And so
Yeah.
I walked out of that
Mm.
that interview, and I had a portfolio of some other stuff, mainly weird stuff that I'd done over the last year, and tried to throw it out the train, but luckily it was an A1 and it wouldn't fit. And I went all the way home and I was so dejected, and I went back to university, and university said, well, it's Polytechnic then, this is pre all universities, it's when they put people in places where they'd be best suited, rather than making everything academic. But I went back and they said, "Oh, look, you've got a second choice. Apply to Leeds. Leeds has got this amazing performance art and do film, experimental film." So I
Mhm.
went back to that interview with this same little video, and there was a man there called Mick Shawn, and he said, "I said, I'm here to show this film." He said, "I haven't got the ability to show that. We stopped making films 2 years ago. We closed down that bit." And I instantly thought, "Oh God, that's it. That's it. That's my life gone." Because that's what you think when you're 18. I'm not going to
Right.
Yeah.
university. It's destroyed. And so I just said, "All right, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, we do painting, printing, and sculpture." And because I thought I had nothing to lose, I said, "All right, well, give me a bloody hammer then, and I'll do sculpture." And he gave me a place. I think he even gave me a place then and there. And what I didn't realise is that he thought I'd be devil's advocate. He didn't get on with all the other tutors, and so he brought me in as a live wire just to kind of,
Right.
make it more exciting. And so I just went home, and suddenly I was doing a degree in sculpture. My
Wow.
whole life is happy accidents.
Yeah.
I never. People always say to me, and in a question I often get is, when did you know you were an artist, or when you were a child,
Right.
when did you know, is if there's this moment? And I always say to people, it's taken me 30 years to be able to say I'm an artist because I
Yeah.
felt such an imposter. I didn't
Yeah.
even stamp my own work till the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, I didn't think I was an artist because I can't draw and I can't paint. I'm not a drawer. I'm not. I now realize it's because my brain works differently. And where some people can see imagery, I see nothing. There's a word for it, anaphasia. They give names.
Right.
They give names to these things, but I didn't realize that. It's taken me a long time to realize that I can't remember music. I only remember music as it's been heard. It's why I
Wow.
could never do drama, because I can't remember lines.
Yeah.
I realized I can only remember 3 letters or 3 words. I can't see a word and then write it down how to spell it. Is it dyslexia? Is it ADH? Is it childhood trauma? Who
Right.
knows? But that's me. But it's taken me so long to realize,
Yeah.
oh God, no wonder I was shit at English. I was dyslexic,
Right.
that I don't,
Right.
I see words differently. I don't have an internal memory, so I can't be hypnotized. I can't
Right.
think in my head, what does my mum look like? I've got no image of it. And so I never thought I was an artist because I can't draw.
Right.
And so but what I was a craft person, because my mum was a fanatical knitter. fanatical. She was to knitting what I am to mosaics. And so
Ah.
from a very young age, in the old days, you know, if you were a bit hyperactive or a bit this or a bit odd, they gave you cross stitch. You know, I was doing needlework. You know, I've still got all my needlework. I've still got a patchwork quilt I started when I was 7 in the basement, you know.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so I naturally always did craft. And my mum learnt to knit when she was 4 during the war in the tubes in the dark. And she learnt on 4 needles how to do soldiers' socks.
Wow. Wow.
And she literally died knitting.
Mm.
And when knitting wasn't very popular in the 80s, my mum dedicated her life, because she could afford to going around knitting shops like John Lewis and teaching everyone how to knit. You know,
Mhm.
she just sat there like in a women's group and would talk, you know,
Yeah.
it's how you,
Yeah.
you know, it's where the dialogue comes from while you do craft. And
Mhm.
so I think that was always in the background, but I never said, oh, I'm an artist. I wanted to do drama. I wanted to do film. I ended up doing sculpture. I ended up doing a fine art degree. I ended up doing mosaics because I couldn't do my sculptures, which were all resin based and really nasty materials to work with, because I was working from home and I just had a baby. I couldn't really keep making resin and killing myself in a really small room. My partner designed a garden with a sunken bit and said, oh, why don't you do a mosaic? And so it, you know, everything I ever did was just accidental. But now when I look back at myself, I go, of course, that was all art therapy, you know.
Yeah.
This happened, you know. I had problems of being an artist because I have an internal dialogue that says you're shit all the time.
Right. Yeah.
You're not an artist, you're crap. You know,
Yeah.
when I left my fine art course, I originally used to try and cast people for a living, but I don't really like touching people. I don't really like being in that situation. I found it all quite stressful, but you know, I wouldn't be able to, there weren't diagnoses. You didn't go, oh yeah, I'm this. So it's just like, oh, I've got to do this and I don't really like doing it. But you know, so it's like all these little accidents that happened along the way, and that's, you know, but in moments of true darkness where, you know, I was self-harming, I'd cut my wrists, I've OD'd. In those true dark moments is when I made art, or people around me helped me make art. And I just think being able to step outside of a situation to express it in some way when I haven't got the voice to express it, you know, saved me, literally saved my life.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to shut the door because it's my dog's opened it. And
Yeah, no, totally.
my dog
I
may
was-
come in because my dog likes to, you know, join me sometimes.
I think that I think it's really interesting to me, all of the layers that you just uncovered, which is, I think, most people's experience, because Lisa and I went to the same school to get our master's. And my experience was very similar to yours, walking into a room where people were critiquing my work. That was extremely personal. And I didn't know it at the time, that it was like so deeply ingrained in myself. And they were just like, well, this is wrong because it's technically not correct. And I had no interest in that kind of conversation. And it took me a really long time to realize it's because that's not what interests me in art. I don't care how well you can paint a painting or take a photograph. I want to know how it makes you feel. And I think that there are almost like two different, I mean, I'm sure there's several different types of artists, but that's a very big.
No, I know. I mean, the thing is if there is, you're going to get the academics, you're going to get the people. It was the same with pottery, you know. Grayson Perry is, you know, one of the greatest potters in England, but go on a pottery course and half the tutors will say, he can't even make a pot, you know, it's not very good, you know. But, you know, definitely there are people who are doing one thing, but for me and for obviously you and a lot of artists who understand the therapeutic value in art, for me, it's all about intent.
Yeah.
No, I've always been interested in outsider art. People always say, oh, you're an outsider artist. I'm like, I'm not, I'm trained. Trust me, I've been going to college for years and years and years, but I have an outsider kind of way of working, which is all the time as a way of therapizing myself. But my interest was always artist's intent. Why did you make it? And that's why I always like art from institutions. I like art from prisons. I like art that's conveying something. I like art that's meant to be a way of communicating where communication is no other way for it. But
Yeah.
I think college, I mean, I left college thinking I would never do art again. I hated my college. I hated it. You know, they told me that my work, I went to college from 90, my degree was from essentially 90, no, what am I talking about? It's from 88 to 91. And I did nearly a year of that in Montclair State University in New Jersey. And so yeah, my degree was then. My course had just been closed down a few years previously, the whole department for sex for degrees, and had been really outrageous. So by the time I got there, they were like very like didn't want anything that was controversial. They would really trying to put that, you know, and so I arrived there and I was absolutely like blown away by the Guerrilla Girls.
Yeah.
You know, the Guerrilla Girls and Judy Chicago and all of this feminist art. And then I was introduced to Edward Kienholz. And actually, I think one of the more things that resonated with me was when I left my school. Basically, I left school at 16, hating it, thinking it was boring. And I went and did a course called Films, English, Drama and Art Studies, which was a very weird 2-year course where you did theatre design, theatre studies, film studies, English and drama and music appreciation. But I went from being bored to death to suddenly being introduced to Arto, Antonio Arto, the theatre of cruelty, the idea that sometimes you had to shock the nation. And this was all super exciting to me. And so suddenly I was in the world of film noir and Hitchcock, women in distress films. But you know, I was such a little mind from 16 to 18. It was all like, wow, suddenly I'm interested in this and I'm making films and I'm doing drama. But then I went, by the time I went to do the university, which is a few years later, the feminist, that was the thing that caught my, that spoke to me. But I had tutors that literally said to me, you know, it's all been done before. I actually named all my pieces my name and something that a tutor had said about it. Oh, so you must be a feminist then. It's just another woman going on about her womb, you know. I literally had it because, you know, they literally come round and say, oh, you don't do that, that's kitsch. And I was like, you know, it's really difficult because your tutors, they're going to grade you. The power dynamics is huge. But if you're 18, 19, 21, a female, you've only just left one form of patriarchy, or you're, you know, my father was mad. You know, I got to university or college, I should say, and you're just in this other world, but you don't understand any of that at the time. And I always said to them, you know, now if they said to me, it's all been done before, I'd go, but not by me.
Right.
The point. I need to do it and I'll have my own way of doing it because I feel a lot. Now I'm so much older and I often go back into universities or I go back because someone wants, you know, there'll be a student that says, oh, you know, can we listen? And I go and I see all their work. It's terrible because I think, oh my God, I did that. And I have seen it all before, but you can understand that that's part of their process.
Yeah.
You know, part of going about learning about your body or processing this or doing things. But, you know, I don't think the amount of power that a tutor has at that time, that I don't think they realize it's so crushing. I can remember that when when I put up my degree show, I felt like I was standing naked in that room. I thought, oh my God, everyone's going to know I've had an abortion. Everybody's going to know because this work tackles abortion. And I felt it, you know, but actually it was a learning lesson because I realized that they didn't. People just look at it and they think differently about it, and it's not. But you know that, like you're saying, it's like that. It's feeling naked because it's so expressive. It means so much to you. I think that's it's not what all students feel because some of them will be putting abstract paintings and love it, you know. But there'll be a group of artists who will probably spend a whole lifetime using art in a therapeutic way and understand how magical it is.
It's amazing what's that quote on artists living out loud? Remember that quote? Have you heard that? Something?
No, I haven't.
Something. So that's what I'm feeling. It's like your art is your voice and it's you living out loud. And
Yeah.
it is very feminist. And it's for me, it's like, although you were in the patriarchal system of the art institution of the, of the gallery world, you were giving a voice to yourself. And so I'm like really curious because you're a craftivist or
Well,
an
that's what I was
artivist.
gonna say, because in a way, I couldn't speak when I first did public art. When I first did community art, I'd get boils on my throat. It was
Mm.
so hard. I can remember we did a piece of art where they said that, they open up your piece and they said, would any of you like to say anything? Because you get the mayor who says something and you get the person who's funded it. And they asked all three of us if any one of us wanted to say it. And no, none of us would say a word. But you have to understand that when we set up this group, one of us was coming from drugs. I was very heavily into drugs and, just had another nervous breakdown. I'd been a care worker for 2 years, and in 2 years, I'd become the registered state manager of a care home, and then had a CASA. I just had a complete breakdown and spent 2 years, being medicated and trying to pull myself together. And when I went to go and apply for a jobs say, how many days sick have you had in the last 2 weeks? Or 2 years, actually. How long? I can't say all of them. I
Right.
was unemployable. I was unemployable. You can't come
Mm.
back from that. You
Yeah.
can't. I think I tried to spent my whole life trying to not get a diagnosis, because in the old days, if you had a diagnosis, that's it. If you've got
Mhm.
depression or you got this, it would carry with you. And I
Right.
definitely didn't want a diagnosis. And so it got to a point where the whole thing exploded and I got a diagnosis of an extreme personality disorder.
Mhm.
And even to this day, when I take out insurance, if I
Yeah.
want to take an insurance, I'll say, have you ever, oh, sorry, we have to ask you, have you ever tried to kill yourself? And you go,
Right.
yes. And they go, okay, but sorry, I know it's stupid, but have you done it more than once? They're like, yeah, 5 times. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you go, it was 40 years ago. you know, what I mean? Do you know what I mean? But it
Right.
carries, all of that stuff is a weight, is a real weight. So I was trying very hard not to, and then I suddenly did. And then I suddenly was in a place where who's going to employ me? Who's going to employ me? And I was doing mosaics, and the person who was looking after my child in daycare had said, oh, I've seen your mosaics. Do you want to come and mosaic the school? We'll pay
Mhm.
you 50 quid a day each. And so all three of us got this first ever job to mosaic. It was the Four Seasons, which is a
Mm.
joke because we don't have seasons anymore. That had to be
Ah.
changed by now. But the amount of Four Seasons I've done in schools, but anyway, so our first ever job was mosaicing Hogarth School, which is where my brothers had been to. And I remember the first day we went into work and we were teaching mosaics, and they said, yes, at the time my name was Richards, because I used to be my real name's Richards, but that's a whole nother story. But they said, oh, Miss Richards, would you like a cup of coffee? And when they went out the room, me and my two friends were like, oh my God, did you hear it? They called me Miss Richards. We were like, we were so blown away, just kind of the respect and that they were nice to us. And I always remember, because we went to the high road and we went to a place called Pizza Express, and we had a pizza there, and we were like the happiest we have ever been, because we were buying it with the earnings of doing this
Right.
community
Yeah.
project. And so it really was like, it brought, we wouldn't have, we were in such a bad place, and it gave us so much joy, and it was so wonderful to be respected and to be liked. And so, from that point, I was doing public art for about the next 10 years.
Yeah.
We weren't capable of talking, And my favorite quote, and I wish I knew where it was from, is, the quickest way to happiness is to find a cause greater than yourself.
Ah,
Mm.
yes.
And it was, because what happened is that I was doing all the community art and stuff, and then I started writing to someone on death row. I saw the Big Issue, which is a magazine for the homeless, and it said human rights, as in WRITES.
Mhm.
Could you
Mhm.
write to someone on death row? And I thought, yeah, I could. Imagine writing to a serial killer. That was my mind at the time.
Right. Yeah.
No, truthfully, because I'm not some wonderful, kind-hearted person. I'm just, I was like, wow, I liked Silence of the Lambs, and I'd read every book there was on serial killers, because I was really interested in why. How could you do that? How does
Yeah.
someone,
Same.
it's the why. So I was like, oh wow, that could be really interesting. And so I applied, and it's pre-computer. It's not this time where you look up and you can see someone and it's like dating apps. It was literally write a letter and they say, look, this is the next person on the list, Louis Ramez. So I wrote and I sent him this letter, and about 3 weeks later he sent me one back, and I thought, what? Oh God, what have I done? Written to someone on death row. Oh my God, this letter just sat there haunting me on my fireplace, because I'd just become a single mother to a 3-year-old, and I was sitting in my flat thinking, oh, you know, I've really wished sometimes I did think about the consequences of my actions. But when I opened it, this letter said, oh, dear Carrie, thank you so much for your letter. I see you do mosaics. I've done mosaics in the past. I'm sending you a photo of a mosaic you might like. And it's like humanity hits you in the face.
Right.
Oh my God. Okay. You know, and so over this course of 5 years, when I wrote to Lewis, he explained to me how capital punishment means those with no capital get punished. Showed me he was undoubtedly innocent of the crime, that, you know, it's all arbitrary, you know, the whole thing. It's like I went on this incredible journey of understanding of something, because I'm very OCD. If I'm into something, I know everything about it. I may forget it and move on to something else, but in that time, you know, there was a 10-year period where I ate and dreamt death row. But the thing is I might not be able to stick up for myself, or I might not be able to talk for myself. But I learned to get up and talk about that. And the craftivism and having a cause greater than myself enabled me to do public speaking. Now I can. I can go around the world. I can stand on a, you know, I don't pronounce my words right. There's lots of things that's wrong with me, but I don't care anymore, because that's what people need to understand about activism, is that what you give, you receive probably 3 times more. You know, people always say, oh, you're so nice, aren't you? You're really nice. You did this, you did that. You know, it's such a nice thing. And you go, you don't understand. You know, my life has been so enhanced by doing these things. You know, I did find power. I did find my own voice. And once I found my voice, I could help other people find their voice. And, you know,
Yeah, it feels like it started for you, like it started as art for you, obviously saved your life, and I completely wholeheartedly can relate to that. And then it sort of became you, it became your voice and your form of self-expression, but also a form of therapy to work through. And then it became something where you could relate to someone that you thought you could never relate to before. And then it became a way for you to almost use your own voice, but also give voice to other people. I can see the timeline there. So where do you feel like you are now in your journey?
well, it's interesting because like everything about my life is kind of governed by what's going on around me. You know, I'm not governed by art. My life governs my art.
Yeah.
And my father died last year at 94. It's the end of a big empire, because he was there's him and 2 brothers, which means whether I like it or not, I'm going through a shedding of a skin that you would naturally do in the crone stage anyway. And so I'm actually at a point where I'm partly in an existential crisis, partly trying to lean into the fact that I'm jumping into the fertile void, because I'm having to simultaneously deconstruct my father's estate, which is a big house with, like, he's a hoarder from hell of rubbish. But mixed in with that rubbish is all of the documents from my family, and my family on my dad's side is spectacularly interesting.
Yeah.
We want to talk about colonialism. My grandfather was one of 3 brothers who in the 18th century went out to were the first people to go travel into outer Mongolia and trade with them and bring camel hair back to New York. And there are buildings in Wall Street with the Ricard brothers on it, because they were the camel hair kings. But they also, you know, traded with Persia and became a count by the Tsar of Russia. And we have documents that say that we owned all the trees on the Caspian Sea that my insane family tried to fight for 40 years back, because they lost it all in the wars. The thing is my grandmother, when she was 40, she got on a ship. And think about the time we're talking about. She got on a ship, went all the way to Iran, and forced a 70-year-old to marry her, and then had 3 children. Yeah,
Wow.
that's why I never met my grandfather. He was dead years ago. He was dead when my, and my father comes from an aristocratic, unbelievably billionaire family that by the time he was came in, he was living in a hut in Budapest, penniless.
Mm.
And so
Wow.
that is a very weird family, but we have all these paperworks because nobody in my mum or my dad have ever thrown away an envelope in their lives.
Wow.
They've just taken the letters out. I mean, it's nonsense, So we've
Yeah.
got this kind of we've got all these documents, letters to the king and stuff. So I've got this period where I'm kind of with other members of my family realizing that this archive needs preserving just because it's interesting. It's of a certain class and stuff, but it's fascinating from seeing a woman because my grandmother was really out there, in terms of what she was doing. And same as I'm trying to get rid of all my father's stuff, which has everything of mine, I'm finding all my everything. But I'm also having to give up my big studio that I've had for the last 20 years because it's part of my dad's estate. And so,
wow.
and unable to even do anything, I have to go through my own house and get rid of everything. And I've got a basement I haven't been in for 16 years. I've just been throwing stuff down in the basement because I like to say I'm an artist, not a hoarder, but really I'm a hoarder.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm being forced at this moment of time to do proper, what do they call it? Swedish death clearance. Do you know what I mean? I don't,
yes.
I don't want
Never heard of
I
that.
don't want my kids to have to do what I'm doing, which is to
Right.
wade through this, So, and I see it as a natural stop in my life where I'm going to go through everything. But I'm trying to work out what do I want to keep because I've collected materials and stuff on the basis that I've got an idea for it. I've got
Right.
8 1960s mannequin dolls. And I've got box over there of 4,000 eyeballs that I bought off of eBay in the 90s. You know what I mean? They're
Right. Yeah.
vintage eyeballs. There was a doll hospital going bankrupt in Essex and they were selling them all off on eBay. So I bought it all. This is, it's wonderful. I was going to stick it all into my mannequins and make an eye, all ideas. Avoid paying tax as well because I bought materials. But now I'm at this stage where I'm going, do I really want to make public art anymore? I'm not sure. I don't need to financially, I don't have to sell things. I became a single parent who had to just, do the things I needed to do because to pay the bills. But now I'm not in that world because I'm married to someone and I'm in a better position. So I don't need to sell things. So I don't want to because, that's the least interesting thing to me. I mean, I don't really want to do public art anymore because I think it's gone to a world where it's too stressful. People are, we now have phones and everyone can take a close up of a picture. And when I'm trying to retell history, either you just offend somebody somewhere along the line. It's, the last job I did, what I always do is I go on Facebooks and I go into local groups and I reach out to them and I ask them for their own photos, and talk to people and try to engage the community. So the imagery that I use in my public art has come from the very place.
Yeah.
And I think it's in the old days I'd go to the library and go through all the photos and because I'm trying as like an archivist to get this information. But on the last job I did all this, and then retrospectively they wanted proof that I had permission for everyone I'd ever spoken to, and I spent 2 days having to write to people on Facebook and get their permission. And it's like, trust me, I've done this work for 10 years, nobody's ever complained. But nowadays, almost could find someone who's going to complain with their photo on a thing, and it's just, I don't need the stress of it, and also because of the ODC way I am, like I've spent the last few years working up in St Helens and Knowsley, which is near Liverpool up north, working on basically women's stories, working class women's stories, and I did 2 big pieces of art there that are great, because it's that famous quote that I won't be able to remember now. Anyway, but the thing is that even though I was only paid to work so many months there or weeks there, that's all I thought about. I don't kind of not think about that and move into my own work. I just think about the job I'm doing. It consumes me.
Mhm.
And I'll work every minute of every day. You know, they say to you, how are you going to know you're going to work in budget? It's like, because I just work with the budget you give me. Trust me. You know, I work for peace work because I make it with love, and I make it with passion, and I make it with such a strong sense of belief that it might help, you know. So, but I've done that now for at least 10 years. You know, I've done that. And I don't want the stress of offending people now, because I think in the time that I've done public art, we went from a place where me and my friends used to advocate to include the local people in the art that they were getting, and would be up against people who do big lumps of metal, or, you know, council. But why would you want to do that? We were the advocates of that.
Mhm.
Now you can't go for a job that doesn't say how you engage in the local people. A load of it's just tick boxing. A lot of it is tick boxing. That's the thing, it's not any more real, because I've done enough jobs where they want me to give the design before I've done the consultation. In fact, I
Right.
argue over 6 months about one job, because it's like, how can I give you a design if I haven't done the consultation? I mean, you know, because it's tick boxing. Can you do this?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we have changed, and changed for the better, because now local artists are often given the jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's local. The work is usually focused about the place, you know. But that's been a 30-year journey that I've watched, and I advocated for it at the beginning. You know, I was the people saying, look, surely we should do something about here.
Right.
You know. But you know, now that is standard, and now you can do degrees. You don't have to just do a degree in painting, printing, or sculpture. You could do one in craft. You can combine them. You don't have to be regimented. You know, it was like you had to explain why you want to move from painting to sculpture in my days. Well, I might like to use the printing studio. Well, you're a sculptor, but I would quite like to do print, you know.
Right.
Now everything is crossover. You have craft, you have all that kind of, I can't even remember what the word is, but you know, where artist participation, or, you know, there's LMAs in it. You know, that's, people have at least woken up to the principle that that's what would make better public art, is to use the community. You know, you're getting double your money's worth. But now I've done that for 30 years, and it's almost at a point where it's like, I don't need the stress, because I know now that trying to promote putting photos of all the community from me just being the person that's going to find it is all too problematic. And I don't, you know, and also I think because I am shedding a skin to a degree, I have got to a stage that you have to live 60 years to get to. I think there's a voice that I want to say, where I want to explain what it's like to be a woman, and to have that experience, and to be from a survivor, from a victim to a survivor. And I'm not really bothered who I see it. In a way, I want this work to be seen when I'm dead, because everything is just so worrying with the way the world that we live in. But do you see what I mean? I think that now, I made all that work when I was 21, and I made a lot of, if you think maiden mother prone, I made a load of maiden shit when I was at college. It all was. Done a lot of mother stuff, because I've been helping over 1,500 people make hearts to women that they love. Do you know what I mean? But now I feel like I'm at the throne stage. I want to kind of retrospectively make a series of art while I'm going through all my own archives, using all my own photos. You know, I'll show you just for See, this is a print of me when I was 7, from a very traumatic holiday in Yugoslavia, where my dad took me to a nudist beach. But, you know, I want to make pieces about this with all the beautiful stuff that I've collected, because I think it will be healing for me. Because I'm so singly focused, I think it might be good for me to focus in on my own life, rather than, in a way, I spent a whole load of my life avoiding everything through drink, drugs, weed. I kind of then did a form of art therapy and helped other people. But I've kind of realized, I have been in therapy for 10 years, but I kind of realized that my OCD workaholic nature is another way of keeping things at bay. I might be terribly happy, but it's keeping everything else. And so, you know, there's part of me that wants to slow down, stop, and make the whole body of work that's just another form of art therapy, but where I'm very conscious of what I'm doing.
You're more aware of it as opposed to being able to see it after it's done.
Yeah, and I actually recognize the fact that I'm trying to write a book. Well, a friend is helping me by interviewing me and turning it into AI, because I could never write anything. But there's a recognition, because I do all this work about trying to keep women's history alive, because we are the carers, we're the mothers, you know. I'm now going to become a granny, you know. I feel that I want to archive my own work. It's
Yeah.
not about publishing the book, it's just I want to write my own history, because those who, you know, it's those who write the history, you know. I have a stage in my life where I think, no, I have a story, it's an interesting story, and it might be some way give hope to some other people that are struggling at different stages, you know,
Yeah.
because I see myself as going to the dark and coming to the light through art and through helping people. So
Mhm.
I'm at this period where I'm just thinking, no, I want to spend a couple of years archiving, writing, documenting, doing some work of my own, and then we'll see, you know. I don't know beyond that.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
sounds
It's a beautiful story. It's like the hero's journey, you know. And then, but now you're going within. So your cycle is, it's legacy, right? So you're, you know, and it's the art of life also, because the art of life is you want people to see your art and make a difference, but then at some point you have to inverse, right? You have to really go inside and get to
Well,
know.
and also I think because, you know, you do as you get older, you know, I'm now 60. If I'm lucky, I might have 15 Christmases.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Life
Yep.
gets faster. I know all these cliches come out of old people, you know, but life does
It-
speed up. I can
it
assure
does.
you, it's
It's
speeded up.
true.
I spent half of my life wishing it away, which is a tragedy, you know. And then I spend the rest of my life going, can you just slow down? Because it's just, you know, it's all going too quick. And so I think as an artist, your time suddenly becomes precious, and you have less energy.
Yeah.
I don't, you just do. There's a, you know, I have less energy. I used to work on about 4 to 6 hours sleep a night.
Yeah.
I only get 6 to 8 now, but I just know I don't have the energy, because I always wanted to live in an artist commune, and I always dreamed that if I ever got any money, I'd get a small holding and in Wales, and all my mates would live there. And now we're all like, oh, I can't even bother to tidy up my garage. The idea I'm going to move all the way here, and I haven't got the energy. It's not
Yeah.
even the actual energy. It's like a life force energy. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, but maybe I'll do all this and I'll have another spurt of
Right.
energy.
Maybe
But
it's
the energy that I do have, I want to do what I love most. And what I love most in the world is to go to other parts of the world and work with other people, you know. And I can only probably do that about twice a year, because it takes up, you know, time. But going to Mexico and creating a mother serpent on a wall in one of the oldest cities in Mexico City, working with the most incredible artists you're ever going to work with, that is life, you know, that keeps me going. You know, but I kind of think now, well, probably I kind of deserve it, because I did put 30 years into,
Yeah.
I mean, but what I'm doing is helping over there, you know, I'm, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're still, I mean, I think that the thing is that I think it's a mistake to say that when you take care of yourself or you do work for yourself, that you're not doing work for the rest of the world. You are doing work for the rest of the world. And so I actually think that for some reason gets misconstrued quite a bit, that it's a selfish
Interesting
thing.
that I've never really, you know, because you know, I still struggle. It's the kind of eternal, as a very female attribute, isn't it?
Yes.
And things
It's
in
the
time.
yeah.
To
Yeah.
be, you know, I'm someone who has been the mother, I'm going to be the grand, but, you know, I was the unfit mother, because it's, you know, I felt a lot of resentment about it, because anything that takes my time away from making makes me slightly resentful. And then, of course, you get to the other side and go, oh, God, it went quicker than I thought. You know, you know, my mum always said that you make better grandparents, because by then you're not in the stress of all your life or trying to work out what you're doing. You come at a different part of your life. So I'm kind of hoping that I'll be a better grandparent.
Yeah. Well, we can always be improving. And I think that so long as you continue to make art, right, you constantly discover new things about yourself. And then you're right. I mean, you never know who's gonna stumble upon your work and have their life changed, you know.
Oh,
Uh,
and you know, and I just think the whole thing about craft and craftivism, it's a wonderful joining of things, because craft in itself is meditative. It will put you in a flow. And my experience of it is that when you get groups of people together who might not be able to voice themselves very well, you know, I've worked with kids who couldn't even make eye contact and say their names, but whilst your hands are busy and you're focused on something, conversations start more. Do you know what I mean? It's so
Yes.
therapeutic by nature, you know, bringing people together, all working on something. The first mosaic courses I ever run were at psychiatric hospital, you know, where me and my friend could have easily have been patients. Do you know what I mean? You know, we're only just the other side, and we
Yeah.
worked in a group there where the old guy that had run the upholstery had died, and so there was quite a nice nurse there. Said, well, you know, you come and do mosaics. And so we sat with this person, and one bloke, elderly bloke, never spoke. He was mute, yeah. And every single week he would pop out a mosaic. He'd just do an apple, like, because
Wow.
you know, some people are very slow and it'll take him hours, but he'd just do one. And then at the end of it, everyone would come and go, oh, that's really good. Oh, that's really nice. And so many people talked to him that after about 6 weeks, he started to talk to people.
Whoa,
Wow.
wow.
He literally got his voice. And it was a
Mhm.
tragedy, because it should have been a movie, you know, this feel-good movie where it was a bit like not Clockwork Orange, that's the wrong one, but One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Yeah.
where they
Yeah, yeah.
imagine them all engaged in mosaics, and suddenly, you know, and
Mhm.
then some other woman came along and decided that, you know, this wasn't helpful. How was it helpful for them to make their own art? They got to learn to make an income. So they
Oh.
stopped them having any freedom of what they did, and we had to make blue and white signs for the hospital.
Oh
And
my
it only took
God.
about it only took about 2-3 weeks, and most of the people dropped away, and then they closed
Yeah.
down.
Oh,
And it's like, this is like, oh, you know, it's, you know, sometimes it just takes the right person, one person with the right mentality to understand and appreciate the benefits of just having a voice and being creative,
yeah.
and just having some freedom of expression, you know,
Yeah.
because you can see the little you can see how people's conscious is awoken by
Mhm.
creativity. I'll tell you, the biggest time I ever saw that is in the 90s, 2000, at the very end of the 90s. Me, Karen, and Mark, and my friend Natalie, we went to work in the orphanages of Romania. You know, at the time where it was all in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Went
Mhm.
with some weird Christian or American Christian organization called World something health. Anyway, we went there and we worked in those places. You know, I think it gave us post-traumatic shock, actually, but we worked
Yeah.
there. We worked with kids who'd never seen color, never seen
Oh,
that if you add red to yellow, it makes orange.
Wow.
You know, these are kids who'd spent all day having to put dots in a thing. I mean, they were so badly treated, I can't even go into it. But we bought paint and we bought materials, and we literally saw a girl who was a hunchback who couldn't speak. Kind of, I could show, I haven't got it, but it's her first painting that she ever did of a dove. She literally, after we went there 3 times, I think, she was upright. She was like,
Wow.
you know, I saw it. I saw how so dramatically they changed inside, just knowing they were good at something, seeing people's
Mhm.
reactions. But more importantly, I learned that the people around them who'd perceived these kids as less than human, because that's the only way you can treat people badly is you know,
Right.
because this was a very poverty-stricken place. But they went from having numbers on their uniforms, just like old dirty uniforms with a 5 on it, but because the TV crew wanted to come and see what these kids were painting, they had to get uniforms. And because it was presented to the outside world, it literally, it changed. You could see it. You could see the people going, oh, did they do that? Well,
Right.
them, you know, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And when we went to that school, they said, well, we'll just bring you the good kids. And we said, no, We either work with every kid or no kids. We're not doing it.
Yeah.
And we literally slept in this orphanage. It's like the aura of the place. And we went back there 3 years. And then because Romania wanted to join the EU, it had to close down all its orphanages.
Wow.
Which actually for some it was great because they were resettled in the community. Some
Right.
it was okay, less okay because families just get paid to have the kids and some just get left
Right.
in hospitals. So, you know, it's a very mixed bag, but
Right.
essentially they didn't want this idea of having horrible orphanages. And some of the kids I know, literally, I mean, they would have been resettled, and I'm sure that that whole experience was good for them. I just know it will be, because I remember one of them, when we were all crying, when we were leaving, one of them looking at me and going, "You really care." It's like somebody actually cares. And we're like, "Yeah, we do." But I think for some of them it will have been a benefit, but for some of them, you know, I still haunts me that, you know, is it better to show it, you know, show a light and then take it away? Because when we left, these kids would be rocking and banging their heads, and it was very traumatic. And
Yes.
one girl would walk around calling me mummy everywhere I went, you know.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, you know, but I've never seen such a kind of like, because you'll only find that in a very, very dark part of the world.
Yeah.
But when you see it and you go, oh my God, look at these kids, look at this, you know, just bringing color into their world, just bringing color, just letting them create, letting the world see that these kids can paint and draw and do these things. And that whole kind of journey, you know, it's a difficult one to go on, but you know, I don't think there's probably more of a way that you can actually experience that
Yeah.
light going on with people.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us today. Really appreciate it.
No, it's
Well,
good.
what is one last word or comment you have to share with our audience about? I mean, you're really talking about the power of art and how it gives voice to everybody.
Well, yeah, I think that, you know, this idea that you're an artist or you're not an artist, it doesn't really matter. You know, the thing is to find something that you like doing, and if it gives you pleasure, to just do it.
Yeah.
know.
One of my most favorite quotes from like a teacher I had in grad school was that, you know, find something that you enjoy doing, whether you are good at it or not. Just give 200% to it
Well,
and
the
just
funny
don't
thing is,
stop, you know?
sorry to interrupt, but my dad's only advice, and trust me, he didn't give me a lot of good advice, is said, Carrie, if you find something you like doing, you're lucky. And if you find
Yeah.
someone to pay, he said, if you find someone to pay you to do it, then you've really hit the jackpot.
You
You
have.
know?
The lottery.
Yeah. I mean,
but
it
it
is.
is,
It's incredible
you know.
if that happens for you. And I think that's awesome when it does. And I
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
actually think that people who become, I know successful people, I know people who make money, and they're driven by that thought. You know,
I know.
people who are
It's hard.
famous, people who make money are usually that's what they want, because you have to have you really do have to want to make money in art. You have to limit your supply, you have to create
Right.
scarcity. You might
Yeah.
be lucky, but that, I think it damages your art, because you
Yeah.
can't, you've got a style then.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
always said to me, we don't know what you're going to do, because if you'd have just done the spray cans, if you'd just done Mad in England, you know, you have to have a brand. People want
Yeah.
some, it's the same way on an Instagram, you know, you've got to do the same thing over and over again. It's like, I can't do that. I'm not,
Right.
I do
Oh, me
all over
neither.
the place. You know, I'm following my little life. I'm not following this career path, or I was lucky I didn't have to follow a money path. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I think people, my thing to say to anyone is that give it a go, because you never know. You know, just try mosaic, just try playing with clay, just try a bit of tapestry, just try writing a poem. I always say to people when I go teach in schools or young people, public art, man, street art.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't even have to be illegal. But trust me, putting something out into the street, whether it's a poem stuck on a lamppost or a little bit of tapestry, just having that voice, trust me, things happen. Dialogues start. You know what I mean? You find your voice just tentatively, just taking over ownership. So I'm always an advocate for people just going out and counterbalancing the visual pollution of advertising, which is essentially selling stuff that to make us feel bad. Just put a little thing, just leave a little thing. You know,
little
someone
thing.
walking to work will just see that and go, wonder what that's doing there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, beautifying our streets is revolutionary.
Mm,
I love it.
beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
so much.
So much. Amazing.